Thank you. I'd like to call to order the June 3rd, 2008 meeting of the Glendale Redevelopment Agency. May we have our roll call, please?
Agency members: Draymond.
Here.
Quintero. Here. Weaver.
Here.
Yusefian.
Here.
Chairman Najarian.
Here. May we have your report?
Agenda for the June 3rd, 2008 regular meeting of the Glendale Redevelopment Agency was posted on Thursday, May 29, 2008 on the bulletin board outside City Hall.
Okay. Are there any objections or corrections noted for the minutes? There being no objections or corrections, the minutes will be submitted and approved as prepared. Next item, please.
Next item is oral communication. Discussion is limited to items not part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. Members of the redevelopment agency may question or respond to a speaker, but there will be no debate or decision. The matter may be referred to staff through the executive director for investigation and report.
Thank you. The first speaker is Mitchell first.
Not the last speaker. First one.
Good afternoon, members of the agency. I come to you today. My name is Mitchell First from Glendale Career College, and I know that many of you have known the history of Glendale Career College. We're actually the new owners of the school. I represent a company that owns 7 career colleges, and we've been around for a long time, 42 years. And recently, just a couple of months ago, we purchased Glendale Career College. I come to you today just for some direction with our desire to move the location, which is really time is of the essence because the current location that the school is occupying is rapidly, the lease is rapidly coming to a close in the end of July. We'd like to move to that brand location. We come to the agency with an entirely different proposal with no retail frontage going in the basement of that building, which is all very much vacant, and a very small portion of that basement, and we just needed the agency's direction on support with some parking in the Orange Street garage in a much scaled down version of what you've previously seen in the proposal's last lives. We have met with city staff. Mr. Lanzafame has been very gracious, although because time is of so much of the essence, I wanted to get your permission to come back to the agency with a presentation to all of you to give you more detailed information about what we're doing, what we'd like to do, and with that, I'd like to ask for any questions that you might have so we can move forward. Yes, Mr. Quintero.
So you, no retail, retail level would be empty, and so you're talking about the basement lease, right? Leasing the basement of that particular building.
That's correct, Mr. Quintero. My understanding is that Office Max or Office Depot has actually negotiated a lease for all the retail frontage in that building, okay. And this we'd be in the basement of that building.
And how many spaces do you anticipate?
When I previously met with city staff, I provided them a matrix showing our different program breakdown and what our morning and evening parking requirements would be, but as of the date we met with city staff, the total enrollment, like in the morning session, which is Monday through Thursday, from like 8:30 to 12:30, would have been 54 spaces, and in the evening would have been 28 spaces, again, meeting only Monday through Thursday. We're certainly open-minded to any suggestions that you might have with limiting, enrollment or paying market for the spaces, market rate for those parking spaces, but we just, because of time is so much of the essence, I just needed your good direction to do that.
One more question. Do you still, or does your company still operate the college across the street, Northwest, or whatever it's called?
That's incorrect, Mr. Quintero. We have our location of Northwest College has been here in the city of Glendale for, a long time. I think about 28 years, I believe, and we used to be over on Glendale Avenue, but we recently, about 5 years ago, moved to Brand. And so we were kind of watching the Glendale Career College story, if you will, as a friendly competitor to Glendale Career College for a long time, not knowing that we would be the owners of Glendale Career College, and that's certainly what has happened in this case.
Mr. Weaver.
I wouldn't mind putting it on the agenda to discuss. But the other thing I would want to see at that time, the previous ones, we're talking a 3-4 year period until that northern portion all totally redevelops. That's probably even further out now, so I'd be looking to see what you're willing to agree to if in the future, if Dornplatz still owns all that, they do something, or what constraints would you have on that? Would you willing to move out temporarily, whatever, when they build or whatever? Because, I don't know, it might be 5-10 years. And I'd like to see that report that came back.
And Mr. Weaver, it's an excellent comment, and actually Mr. Lanzafame shared that with me. And since that time, we had approached Dornplatz to say, kind of what's the skinny, what are you going to do with this, on a long-term basis? And we got the impression that wasn't not only on the front on the front burner of the stove, but it wasn't on the stove. So we just thought that wasn't something that we necessarily needed to be concerned with at this juncture of this endeavor.
Mr. Draymond.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I like about what you're suggesting is the fact that the retail space could remain retail space, and that, to me, is just absolutely key. So, I'm interested in hearing more.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes,
Go
please
on the
agendize
agenda.
it.
They can't question the speaker?
No, this is horrible.
No.
Too much.
Colleagues are beginning to ask questions, and it's becoming more of a
Mr.
I'd like to have it on the agenda. Becoming more of a deliberation and
Yeah, I also would like to have it on the agenda, and
hopefully sooner.
I still have a bad taste from the previous dealings with Dornplatz on this subject. We spent a lot of time on it, and it came out to nothing, but let's put this on the agenda.
No
Mr. Starver,
commitment.
Mr. Lanzafame. Thank you.
Thank you.
Herbert Milano.
Good afternoon. My name is Herbert Milano, members of the Redevelopment Agency and city staff. Last night, I've listened to a presentation by Mr. Lanzafame to the Glendale Homeowners Coordinating Council on the very different areas of Glendale that are subject to redevelopment. And having participated in all of the discussions with regard to the downtown specific plan, and being fairly familiar, I think better than most residents and stakeholders in Glendale with regard to how redevelopment works, I find myself in a very uncomfortable position, because as I listened to that presentation, I kept thinking about the lack of candor and the lack of transparency that I was expecting from a presentation of this nature. It seems like the continual message is that we will control the message and we will not provide the candor necessary. So I want to address one area, the area of the mobility study. From my recollection, the city paid more than $500,000, possibly as close as $1 million for that particular mobility study that I felt was incredibly well done. The problem that I see is that from that particular study to its implementation, it's taking a tremendously long time to put it into effect. And some of those recommendations were fairly simple, in my opinion, implementations that could be effected quickly with regard to the issue of the cost of parking. Cost of parking, especially at the Americana, was brought up. And one of the key elements of this mobility study was that if the parking across the board through downtown Glendale had parity, people would not be driving around picking and choosing where to get free parking or not. And so I felt it was a very good evaluation of one of the ways that we could maximize the availability of the parking and reduce the traffic congestion, which is a major concern for a lot of individuals. So the idea of reporting on how effective the mobility study could be, how fast are we along with regard to that problem, what is the speed of traffic, how has it impact, that was not presented. It's the same information that was being presented way back on the downtown specific plan discussions. But we don't get a gauge, and we're not divulging to the public where the gaps are, where we need to work, or how far along in the implementation we have. So it is nice to have anecdotes, but I think that we need to have, a clear objectives with regard to how it is impacting, for example, the merchants on Brand. I talked to someone, Mr. Najan, that you know very well, the owner of El Morphy. And I go to Brand practically every day. And so we talked, and I asked him, how is your business doing? And he says, well, when the Americana opened, it was incredible. But now that people are getting used to, things are basically falling back. So there is a trend, and the trend may not necessarily be a positive one. And I asked him if the Merchants Association were doing something to energize, the merchants on Brand and the restaurants and so forth. Ideas like just putting international flags and creating a dynamic that would draw people away from the Americana or after they finish shopping. He says there's nothing energetic taking place. And I figured that one of the objectives of redevelopment is to create precisely that type of dynamic, to basically enliven and create out of these areas, a truly sustainable and growing environment for merchants. The other area that was discussed oftentimes in the DSP meetings was the look and the experience of people walking on Brand, the number of windows, the number of retail shops, and so forth, so that we're moving towards the type of energy that we find when we go to Colorado Boulevard in Pasadena. And so sometimes I look at this piecemeal approach, and all the objectives that were set out back on those discussions for the DSP don't seem to hold when it comes to various different projects in precisely the area that was discussed. And I think those are the gaps. We don't go back to looking at what the objectives were. And it's one of the issues that I had with regard to the Royal Palace. Precisely at the time that we were discussing and it was being suggested that we have clear, open view into the establishments along Brand, we basically had funded by the city an establishment that will have a closed view of that particular building. So we do things that go contrary to the objectives set out by your very own policies. And I think that is the gap. We don't get the measurement on traffic. We don't get the status on the implementation of the recommendations of the mobility plan, and we get basically a structured message that is very controlled to the public. And I think we can grow beyond that. We are mature enough to be able to accept that if things don't get done, we will move towards correcting it. Thank you.
Thank you. I do not have any other cards for oral communications. Close oral communications. Let's move on to item 6, please.
6 on the business agenda at 6A is Director of Development Services regarding Alex Regional Theater Art Board quarterly report and report on bid proposals received as part of the long-term maintenance and capital project spec numbers R34, R35, and R36. A1 is a motion accepting the Art Board quarterly report and ordering it filed with the Director of Development Services. A2 is a motion accepting the lowest responsible bid from LA ProPoint, Inc. to purchase of an electric-powered capstan winch in connection with spec number 3, in respect to spec number R34 in an amount not to exceed $18,463.51, including contingency. A3 is motion accepting the lowest responsible bid from Muir Chase Plumbing, Inc. for laboratory fixtures in connection with spec number R35 in an amount not to exceed $37,286, including contingency. At A4 is a resolution dispensing with competitive bidding and approving an agreement with California Restoration and Waterproofing Co., CRWC, to perform specialized waterproofing, water leak repair, and restoration services. And last at A5 is a resolution rejecting all bids received for the lighting console project in connection with spec number R36 and directing city clerk to re-advertise a revised spec number R36.
Okay. Reports, bids, rejecting bids, dispensing with competitive bids. How would you like to
I'll make a
brief us?
motion if there's no questions.
Do my clients,
I don't need We've already approved all this. This is
sorry, wrong job.
these are the motions.
My colleagues prefer a motion on this.
Let me try it.
Yes,
Number
Mr. Weaver.
6A, 1, 2, and 3.
Second.
6A, 1, 2, and 3. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Agency members Draymond,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Yusefian.
Aye.
Chairman Najarian.
Yes.
Can we take 4 and 5 together? Move 4 and
Taken
5?
together.
Yes.
6A,
Then
4 and
mine.
5.
Okay. Second. 6A, 4, and 5. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Agency members Draymond,
Yes.
Quintero,
Yes.
Weaver,
Aye.
Yusefian.
Aye.
Chairman Najarian.
Yes. Next item?
Is there any agency member or staff comments?
Just want to thank Mr. McComb first.
Right.
I'd just like to thank Mr. McComb,
Mr.
Mr.
McComb,
Olway for
sitting
showing
through
up here
this.
today.
Thank you. Mr. Yusefian.
Mr. Mayor, a while back when we were going through Americana, we talked, and I talked to Mr. Starbird. He thought it was a good idea. As you walk in the areas that Americana is, you see trees on the sidewalks, and as you walk, you hear this music, and you don't know where it's coming from. Generally, there's speakers in the trees. And as the speaker was talking earlier, is to continue some of that mode or mood further up. I'd like to see what the possibilities are of continuing that a little bit further, so it kind of moves that motif all the way up to maybe to Brand and Broadway and a little bit further on.
And it costs money.
Get a report and see what the costs
Right,
are for the
that's what I'm
wiring
saying.
and the speakers,
And just plug it into the existing
we'll fight over the
music that is
radio
going on
station.
in Americana, so it's just a kind of continuation. We don't have to worry about programming, it's just the same music that goes on.
Well, let's make that a more general direction. Anything we can do to encourage the flow of patrons and shoppers up Brand, including music, perhaps any other themes of design or
Flags,
flag or whatever.
Italian flag for Niente
Plants,
Milano.
he's hanging plants, little potted plants from the
Stuff.
trees and stuff like that.
Okay.
Activation of,
Okay.
For example, the forced march of retail consumers northbound on Brand. Yes,
Oh, that would be an
At
interesting one.
gunpoint?
that sort of thing.
Mr. Draymond.
Two things. One is, I'd like to know if we can, we had told the small business owners at the Small Business Economic Summit that we held that we would schedule the next quarterly meeting after the opening of Americana to get them back together and see in general how everyone was faring. And it does relate to the speaker's comment earlier in a tangential sense, to see exactly, rather than anecdotally, one guy with a restaurant on Brand, to see more generally how we're doing, not just on Brand, but in other areas. And the other is, are we allowed to talk about this meeting under the attorney-client, since we're now your clients?
You can talk about it, but I can't. I have to keep my mouth shut, so
Just a clarification.
you might want to carry on the charade.
Okay.
Mr. Lanzafame.
Just a quick announcement, if you are available this Friday night at 6 o'clock, the Student Showcase, the City of Glendale with the Glendale Unified School District and the Alex Theater are sponsoring. It is highlighting the artistic talents of our local youth. It will be at the Alex Theater. Tickets are $10. I have them for sale if anybody would like to go. It really is a nice event. All of the schools participate, and it's about a 2-hour program. You'll feel really good walking out. So if you or anybody in the community is interested, this Friday night, the Alex Theater, 6 o'clock.
Thank you. Anything else? If not, I'll take a motion.
So moved to adjourn.
We are adjourned.